Imagine having access to a tribe of mentors, experts in the biggest questions in tech. This is Making Revenue Tick. So we've actually just finished recording the episode. So Jessica, for people who are just tuning in, what are they going to learn about in the next 60 minutes?
I'm going to have my goldfish memory on display here. But we ranged from everything to go-to-market strategies, which we talked about a lot of problems around the language that we use today and how that becomes a little exclusive to our world, all the way to relationships, how to nurture them, how to hire the right people who are interested in the same things that you are. We had a riveting conversation about entrepreneurship versus intrapreneurship. How do we value ourselves and the work that we do and know our limitations? And we ended up talking about orchestration of revenue or of relationships within our revenue system. So it was a jam-packed episode, and I'm sure I missed many, many things, but that's a summary.
No, it was amazing. I think this is going to be perfect for founders who are in a desperate desire to grow their business but don't really know how. Perfect for entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs who are trying to actually go and execute these business strategies into real life. And then anyone who's actually involved in sales and leading teams and they're going, I actually just need to generate some blooming business now. How on earth are we going to go and do that in this modern world? And we're really scared about how hard it's getting and the impact of AI. Surely there's a better way to enable technology to help us to go and achieve success in our careers. So without further ado, let's roll the VT. Hello and welcome to Making Revenue Tick, our masterclass format. And I'm delighted to be joined by Jessica Robertson. Jessica, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Again, another friend of a referral, which actually ties perfectly into the topic of the podcast that we're going to talk about. But how do you know the legend that is Stephen Newman?
Just through the exact same way, a referral of a referral of a referral. These things compound, right? Like you start building your network, and Stephen's an amazing friend, and we actually have a quota for each other where we account how many times a week we talk to each other and see if it meets quota or not. So he came from Rich. Rich came from just some other LinkedIn connections and reaching out there. So it's a snowball effect.
Yeah,
creating the network.
The power of the network, right? I'm not sure I can run the data, but the amount of podcast guests that we've had who have come from referrals, it must be like 80%. It's phenomenal.
I think the first time we talked, I was immediately like, oh, you need to talk to Dave Thompson. And like, oh, you need to talk to this. And it's the stream of the way things work. It's honestly the way go-to-market works too. So I totally get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about that, right? So the topic where we talked and had a pre-chat and we could have spoken for hours and we could have talked about a million different things, but we would just bore our listeners to death. We've only got 5. So let's make sure that we do the best by those.
Let's try to keep them for the full time that we're here. I'll take that as my personal mission.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're one of our 5 audience members, what we're going to talk about today is something that Jessica mentioned on our first call, which is about go-to-market. And I was like, yeah, go-to-market. And then we had this really interesting conversation about why maybe that word of go-to-market is probably one of the most overused in the whole of our industry. So Jessica, why is this topic of like go-to-market?
Yeah, I'd ask this back. I'm guessing the 5 people here are people like me, right? In the revenue space. And the question that I asked you on that first call is, when's the last time you were talking to your team and you said, how do we gonna go to market? No.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
I don't. Maybe I'm one of the few, and maybe the listeners can revolt here. But I think that go to market is used in titles and boardrooms and in cold emails, right? And all 3 of those things don't talk about the strategy and the complexity of going to market, right? They're mixing strategy and activity. And these 2 things are like, you're like, wait a second, why are we talking about go to market in this way? Like outside of the boardroom, to me, it should be reserved for titles and the first slide on your section of the board presentation. And then everything else is about strategy and what you must do in order to get there, right? Like, how do you actually accomplish going to market? And there's lots of different ways, but yeah, this is the problem with this word, in my opinion. I may stand alone here, but
I don't think you do. It clicked. And we've done a few podcasts recently that have go to market in the title. And I don't know I don't even know what the search term volume is. Like we do some sort of like SEO and LLM optimization when we do a podcast, but it's quite basic. So I'm not looking at like search volumes. But when I thought about it, I was going, well, I've never really spoken to like a sort of chief go-to-market officer or a VP of go-to-market. But there are lots of people in like talent, I'm go-to-market talent acquisition specialist. And like you say, people talk about go-to-market strategy. But why do you think it's become this massive catch-all buzzword?
I think we just like buzzwords in our industry. And I was listening to a talk yesterday from, I think it was Simon Sinek or somebody in this like Adam Grant world, psychology kind of mixed with work. And they said, we just like acronyms, period. We like buzzy words. We like acronyms. We like something that we can attach on to. And it's funny because it brings us in. It doesn't open us up when we start using words like this, right? Because people have to think about, what do we mean? Right? Like one of the girls that works for me, funny story about her. She came in, she had double master's degree in genetics or something like this, something way out of my world that I don't know anything about, way overeducated to be in the sales world, but takes a hard pivot, goes into sales later in her life. And she comes in and she's like, what's an SDR? What's an AE? What's GTM? And like, one of the first things that I did at Orbb was create a like revenue dictionary of all of the things that we say that don't make any sense. We should just call it what it is. And I think go-to-market's just a part of that, right? It's a part of like just trying to shorten everything that we do to be colloquial and buzzwordy. And it's one of those things that's stuck. And there's a lot of other ones. We could spend the next 2 hours talking about all the acronyms that don't make sense, but I think it's just one of them.
Yeah, smash the acronyms. Because I think the other one we did mention was GoToNetwork. Because I said, a bit of a GoToNetwork specialist, but you didn't particularly. So what's your view on GoToNetwork as a term?
It's similar, right? Like GoToNetwork, it is probably the most well-known version of what we do. So I'm like inherently talking about it a lot. But I think it's in the same bucket of GTN is the same as GTM. Like, what does it actually mean? What's the strategy around it? How do you orchestrate it? How do you execute it? What are the activities that you do in order to make this funnel come to life? So I've tended to go a little bit, and we talked about this, and it's semantics. It all doesn't matter, but near bound versus inbound versus outbound versus midbound, all bound, these are all the same thing. Like it's all just colloquialisms. And for the revenue leaders, that I think we just need to figure out what we're talking about is relationships, right? And in GoToNetwork, this is what we're talking about. This is what it boils down to. So I'm trying to talk about it in a little bit more connective tissue way because we're in a white space, right? We're educating people not on what is a relationship. Everybody knows what a relationship is. We didn't invent that, thank God. But the function of bringing relationships into your revenue strategy can be talked about in much more simple terms. So this is what I'm trying to do. Stay away from those acronyms, stay away from buzzwords, and talk about like really how do we do it?
Yeah, I think it's a really great place to start because it is like, even like last year, I was learning about SAM and SOM, and our ICPs and our TAMs and all this sort of stuff. And I was going, I don't know what SOM is. I must be an idiot. And like sometimes you don't know what these words are. And then I repeat them a few times and but then other people didn't get it. And I'm like, why can't we just talk about, right, there is a group of people that we really should go and talk to because they're likely to be the kind of people we can really help, And it's like, who do we know that might be able to like refer us into them and they've already got some relationship and they've got some trust. So if we think about, and what I love about this topic is when we talk about relationships, maybe it's because I'm quite extroverted. I'm definitely a relationship type of person. So I would index towards it. But I think that in a world where we spent 20 plus years just going, let's look at our database of prospective customers, and we're just going to go and do all of this segmentation, and then we're going to go and create marketing for big broad brush segments, and then we're going to send out 1 million in the hope that some of them will actually land, in the hope that if we do that enough times, then we might get some sort of conversation and then we might get a deal. And then that deal, if we stick with it enough time, when we worked out our churn, our average order value, customer lifetime value, we'll get a bit of profit and we'll have a company. You know, whereas what you're talking about is no, this is a people sport. And if sales is a team sport, then people is the operative word. So like I guess what would be interesting to understand is, why do you care about this topic of relationships? Why is it one that like you've spent so much of your career becoming better and better at?
I'm going to throw the question back to you in a way, because I think you'll have a really unique perspective. You're helping in several different ways companies go from something that's founder-led to team-led, right? That transition. So let's talk about the skill sets that you need and the functionality and the purpose of the team when you make that transfer. Because in my mind, founder-led is all relationship-based. It's them using their VCs, it's their friends, their family, going out, trying to find people to sell when nobody wants to buy from you because you have zero credibility. And then you move, so all of that's relationship-based and all of that's network-based. And then you move into exactly what you said, which is like this reach mechanism where you look at your sales addressable market or your ICP, this huge group of people, and you say, how do I get there the quickest? Right? And then you start to think about, you hire people to help you scale this, right? But then what are I think we miss like actual functionality between hiring, strategy, and the plan between those two mechanisms. And so for some reason, we just throw away relationships at some point. And I would throw that question back to you. At what point do you see it that teams are scaling to this ICP market and the skill set becomes different?
Yeah, I think for me, from all of my experience, it works in phases. So you've got the founder-led stuff. So they might have they've been an entrepreneur, let's say. They've got, worked at Meta or they've worked at Apple. They've got some credibility. No one knows what their new thing is. They've not put any money into it. Maybe it's pre-revenue. So they go out to the people that they've already got a relationship with to say, I've got this idea. Mm-hmm. And then try and sell a bunch of it because people believe in that person, and then they go and raise money by people believing in that person, probably more than they do about the idea. And then they'll do that to recruit their first team. It's like, come with me on this journey. And then when they go and hire that first like professional sales management layer, where they need to delegate the responsibility for certain outcomes and objectives that the business have, they've got to have such a high amount of trust that those people are going to act like founders. We call them intrapreneurs inside the business. Yeah. That they often get that wrong. 60% of first-time sales leader hires that a founder makes fails. And it's often because they're indexing.
It's not higher. I'm shocked it's not higher.
That's maybe like a year-old data. It could be higher now, but again, I mean, even if you think about it, it's, 60% of the time you're going to get it wrong. That's really painful. And then you've got this team of people that you bring in who you trust are going to go and hire more people like them. And you get to a point where the founder probably, and we spoke to like Gallagher at Aligned, it was like a 35-person business at the time that we had him on the podcast, but he said that he was involved in all those recruitment processes still. But he'll get to a point where he won't be. And so every founder gets to the point when they're not actually involved in the recruitment process anymore because it's just not scalable and they have to pass that responsibility of hiring onto someone else. And then when that transition happens, where suddenly the person who had that original idea, who got the initial customers, got the funding, built in that early entrepreneurial team around them, is no longer involved in selling the vision and selecting and engaging the talent that comes into the business, even though that talent will be the people that now go and speak to customers. And it's the first point of interaction that business ever has with the market. Even if it's marketing, designing the marketing collateral, it's stuff going out and talking to strangers that the founder doesn't have any kind of relationship with. I think that's a really key point where it goes wrong. The other thing would be, it's typically probably 5 to 10 million of revenue where you've got ICP. You have done lots of iteration around that. You've got it down to a point where you're going, there's repeatability here. we can literally bring in most people into our team and they will be successful following our playbook with this messaging into this type of person. We've proven it. Well, let's go and scale it. And then it all becomes about, we need to increase profitability, average order value. We want to try and move up market. They might not be profitable up until that point. So then it's about, we need a system that's so easy to execute that we could hire almost anyone. And Scott Leese talks about that. You could almost have anyone coming into your business doing what you ask them to do and then being successful. And I think that's the point where it becomes about numbers, because the people in the boardroom and the investors spend more time looking at the reports, preparing the story around the reports, than they do speaking to the team and speaking to the customers.
That's where it broke. Because 5 years ago, right? Like, and this comes a little bit into my story. I was hired to build an outbound team. And what did I do? My very first action was to hire 10 SDRs. And it worked. It worked. Like, we plugged the volume. Now we were a transactional sale, lower ACV. It's fine. It works. But at that moment, you release the orchestration, right? The relationship, the influence, the activation as a process. And like you say, you make it, I call it button hitting, right? You just click these buttons, say these words, do this thing, and we get a sale. But that's not working anymore because inboxes are flooded, cold calls are screened, your buyer is skeptical. Value has to come forward. And that transition between what used to be founder-led kind of intrapreneurial, and wow, that's a tongue twister there, but that thought behind these people who founded the business are a team going after this thing that investors and friends and customers are believing in is now scaled. And I think go-to-market shifting to forcing CROs, and it almost comes fully on VPs of sales and CRO shoulders. How do we now bring it back? How do we bring scale to the old way? Because your buyer's more skeptical than ever. Your buyer is harder to reach. We say reach versus access, right? It used to always be about reach. Now it's like, how do you access it? You can have every signal in the world. Everyone does, right? Information's a commodity. Everybody's paying attention to the same signals. But access to those people is still the issue. I don't care if they go visit your website. I don't care if they change jobs. I don't care any of this stuff because everybody knows it. How do you access them? And access has always been what founders have been good at because they have the title, they have the room. And maybe that's where this whole go-to-market thing comes back in, is like, I'm disguising my SDRs as go-to-market. That's what their titles say on LinkedIn. So when I send them into really high-level places, they're not, oh, this is an SDR coming. Why? Because access. It's really hard to get. And so this is where I think we're in this evolutionary period of go-to-market transitioning from making all those same jumps that you just said, but that scale jump is different today. Google's harder than ever. Nobody's Googling anymore. There's a lot of white space technologies that don't have the right words. Just think about us, for example. We're white space technology. Nobody's Googling nearbound. Nobody's Googling GoToNetwork, right? And we pay for all of these words. And I truly know nobody's looking, like there's no clicks there, right? So in this time of emerging technologies and emerging solutions, how are you getting access? And this is the entire, I think, problem of go-to-market today. And there's not a single, I meet with 50 or 60 go-to-market people every other week or so, and all of them have the same problem. It doesn't matter what they're selling. They cannot get to the people they need to sell to.
Yeah. And they do know who they are, right? So they've done all
the
that
best
hard.
ones do. The
Most
best
of them
ones
do.
do. Yeah.
And
I mean,
if
this
you don't,
is,
then you're screwed, right? Because you don't know who they are and you can't get access. Then the ones you can get access to, who you can get leads with, and maybe you can even win deals with, will probably be terrible customers, low profit, churn.
Yes, exactly. And this is like so many startups, just like hiring the wrong salesperson, get the wrong ICP first. And playbook that I've always used for ICP is start as narrow as humanly possible. And startups tend to actually think the opposite. Let's go wide. Let's cast that net. Let's see who comes. Whoever statistically has the most in the most group, then that's who we're going to choose as our ICP. But it's, in my opinion, the wrong way, because then you go developing products for these people who like aren't actually who you'll end up selling to. You focus on onboarding teams that don't make sense and won't fit in your future onboarding. So narrowing that ICP to the most narrow impact that you can have allows you to develop a product that works for them, allows you to give them value super early and super quick to the jump. And then, so on from there, slowly work your way out. But then you have to be really good at testing and iteration and all of that, because you might get it wrong the first 3 times in these narrow groups, right? So, this is, I don't know how many times we've jumped subjects in the last 20 minutes, but it's all of these problems interweave, right? Like hiring the right people, finding the right ICP, putting the right strategy to the right time of the business is critical. And
Yeah,
I think
I agree.
it all wraps up. So
I think it's all linked, to be honest. So you've got go to market. We're talking about what is your market. We're talking about
Yeah.
2, how do you go to them?
Yeah.
And we're talking about like go. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What's the actual activity that you go and achieve? So it's like, what do we do to access who we want to speak to? And you've talked about access from it. I love. I know I heard that terminology before, but it's not about reach. It is about access. I don't really talk about people going, we have an access problem. People talk about we have a pipeline problem. So when people are coming to you with their problem, how are they describing the problem that they're facing?
It mixes, and you really see groups of people kind of form, right? And I think you see that they have a top of funnel problem. We're calling tons of people. We're pumping more and more and more volume in and getting less and less and less results. It's only going to expand the end of this year. I think cold outreach is going to change massively in the back half of 2025. Hot take. But you can't like ABM your way to trust, right? Like you can't get that access via these like top of funnel issues. So I ask a couple questions, which is like, how are you doing it? What's your strategy today? And you see people fall in, well, I just can't get enough people in the front door. We don't have, the access that we need, and diminishing returns is happening, blah, blah, blah. And so those people actually have a lead problem, not even a pipeline problem. They can't even get people interested. And most of the time, I would say it's not actually a product problem. Like it's like they haven't well defined their ICP. They haven't looked at their messaging. They haven't like really done the homework in the front side. And then I think once you get past that issue, this stalling between like created lead and pipeline closure is longer than ever. Every sales cycle. I was reading an article that said people are spending longer buying a $10,000 piece of software for the business than they do personally buying the $30,000 car. Think about that. Think about the effect on the sales cycle, because people personally are in a much different position than the company, and they spend less time buying a $30,000 car than they do a $10,000 piece of software for the business. So what does that force you to do? Bring value forward, get over the trust hump, get over the access hump. So I think those are 2 different problems and solved very different ways. And then you have like the post-sale and retention problem, which is access still becomes an issue. Like we get them in the front door, we have great success with them. And then what happens? People move, people change jobs. You have to rebuild that connection. You're always worried, am I like the next vendor out, right? Because then that whole cycle starts again. So I think those are the 3 main groups. And I just said the whole sales cycle. So really revolutionary idea here. But these are the buckets that I'm seeing fall into the most.
Yeah, same. And being one of those salespeople in an environment where you're just being asked to do more and more with less creativity and more like control. We need you to do this because we have to go and achieve this kind of like effort metric for us to just, to say that we're doing the right thing. And I think that what it does is it kills your sales team. Because if you're asking them to do something that doesn't make them successful, why would they continue to follow you? And if you're not really giving them the skills to be able to be effective when they do have the opportunity, then they're going to fail. But the flip side is also true. The businesses and the leaders who give people direction and then enable them to go and be successful when a lot of the people in the market around them are failing. The data's like 70% of sales teams are missing quota right now. It's breathtaking in terms of what that can do for your attraction. Like, we're working with a client in Canada. I was going to say Canada. In Canada, you're a Series A business. We hired a head of sales in there last year. She's done a phenomenal job. The business has too, and they've grown 300% this year. And I'm like, wow, that's such an anomaly compared to most of the situations that we're brought into, which is we have been failing. We got rid of the last head of sales. The sales team's failing. We need to, bring in this like unicorn sales leader who's going to be able to suddenly fix everything. And I'm like, when you really start to unpick what that is like as a company culture and how attractive that will be, and when you speak to astute salespeople who ask good questions about, what's the quota attainment like, and what is the strategy, and what's the support look like, and why would this be different from the last startup that was incredibly painful to work at? Those businesses suddenly find it almost impossible to hire the best talent. And I just wonder, you're a revenue leader who has run teams. You worked in a number of different startups. What are some of the things that you see make the best startups win when most others around them fail?
First of all, it's hiring the right team. And this is to be so explicitly honest about the situation. You need somebody that isn't shocked when they walk in the front door. This is a startup. I'll zoom back to Orbb for a second. When I started 6 months ago, I was new. I didn't know what I was doing. This is a whole new product for me. I'm developing a strategy for it. I have a track record. I know generally what the playbook looks like to come in and build an office and hire the first employees and get healthcare and do all of these stupid little things that have to happen in the middle. But I think what you guys are doing on the hiring the right people is probably the most pivotal thing. I've been a part of really successful teams from a revenue standpoint that were really hard to manage. And that is the absolute worst situation because you're killing it and you have the wrong team. But that's right product, right time, right strategy, wrong people. That's rare. That's an anomaly. But I've done it, and it's very hard on the leader. Everything's very hard on the leader. So have sympathy for us, dear listeners. But then you have the opposite, which is new. We don't know. Come learn with us. And the worst thing you can do is promise to somebody, this is a rocket ship. We're I just find that saying, hey, listen, it's up to us. This is either a boom or a bust. And we're in a high stakes, high gamble situation. Let's go. Let's go do this impossible thing, and to have this team with you who I don't really care if you believe in the idea. I want you to believe that this is possible, right? Believe that the concept of bringing something new to market is possible. Because then it's easy to fall in love with products. It's easy to drink the Kool-Aid. It's easy to figure out if you have the right ICP and the right everything else, right? So I think it's about the people telling the truth up front. And then I think we're going to hammer this home a lot today. It's about figuring out your ICP, because everything depends in sales on having the right person at the right time with the right budget, with the right influence, right? That's it. And if you have all four of those things wrong, your people will never be successful. They will never stay. They won't help you figure it out, especially if you're not good at iterating. And so when I was hiring the team here, what I said is, listen, we're probably going to fail for the first 6 months. Probably going to fail, but we're going to test the hell out of this. If something's not working in 2 months, we're going to change it. It's up to you to change it. I can't be everywhere. I'm one person. I have one ops person. Go be creative, go try it. Tell me what's working. Tell me every day what's not working, more importantly than what is. So I think it's about the team, the market you're going after. And I like a lot of people would sit here and say like, oh, the product has to be, listen, I've got some stories. The product doesn't have to be anything. You have to be able to craft the message. We are really early in our market right now, right? Like our product's amazing. We have great data. It, like it's about education for us right now. It's about like telling the story of why we exist. And I mean, I still am hard on the product team all the time because we need to evolve and we need to be 18 months ahead of the curve. But I still think that those two things, probably the most pivotal from a revenue standpoint, is the right team with the right process. And when those two things you're able to orchestrate, um, most of the time you can be successful. There's of course outside indicators of everything, but most of the time you can be successful.
Obviously fully agree about the right team side. And it is, I think that the tagline I'm playing around with at the moment to resonate most with my ICP is that people hire experience but fire behaviors. And it's like, we're always like taught, and particularly if it's an investor backed company and, maybe they've made a couple of bad decisions. They're like, well, let's just go for the safe bet. First thing that clients often brief me on is they have to have 3 years experience in our industry. And I'm like, you're looking to disrupt your industry. Why would you like people from your competitors? And you're like a scrappy 3 million ARR startup. You want to poach people from 100 million ARR business or bigger. Like, they're not going to be the type of resourceful people who love a challenge and can thrive in ambiguity and execute and have as many sort of responsibilities and hats as you need them to have in your startup. You'll probably break them, right? And everyone goes,
100%.
oh, the startup sounds quite fun, but it only takes a couple of bad experiences for people to like, I don't want to go into startups, it's too risky. But you've sold risk to people as a bonus, right? It's like the thing that they're going to go and get. And it reminded me of that like famous job advert from like the 1700s, which was like, men wanted for impossible challenge, risk of survival minimal. And they had like, floods of applications. And it's like that. There are people in life who love going into the unknown and love the challenge of it for what they will become. And like doing something that scares them, knowing that this is going to be a really exciting opportunity to grow and to learn. And if I can do it with some great people around me, we're going to have a hell of a lot of fun figuring this stuff out. And when I'm talking about hiring, I talk about how the best candidate should have an ICP, but I just replace the word company with challenge. Like, what's your ideal challenge profile? What's an opportunity full of the challenges you most enjoy, where you do your best work, where you come alive, you're in flow, you've got energy, you're just finishing the work, buzzing all day. Not you're in a place where you can technically do the job, it's within your comfort zone, but it drains you. You procrastinate on it. And by the end of the day, you're just like absolutely sick to death of it and you burn out. I think a lot of the time, burnout isn't like we're working really hard. It's we don't understand the purpose of why we're doing this.
Or it's not in our natural skill set, right? Like it's not, you're trying to, and it's one thing being uncomfortable versus exhausted. Those are two different profiles as well.
Yeah.
You gave me language for this, actually. I've been one of the 5 listeners for the last several shows. So you gave me the intrapreneurial language. I don't think I had been able to describe why it is that I don't like to be the CEO, especially in early stage startups. And I talk to my CEO every day. Like we are a very cohesive unit. My last company, I was like considered myself, even though I wasn't a founder, and with the onus that brings. Can you define for me what, like, just so I know how to fully articulate it, even for myself, what is an intrapreneur for you, and does it change with stage of the company?
I don't think it does change with stage. So intrapreneur, so the big thing is that all entrepreneurs need intrapreneurs around them. And what an intrapreneur is someone who acts like a founder within the business. And founders have a lot of strengths, but they've got a lot of gaps. And so what you want to do is hire someone who cares as much as you do, works as hard as you do, but has a different set of skills and a different set of experiences so they can fill in the gaps around you. because you want the founder to be like excellent at what they want to do. But where founders most often fail and where founders burn out is they try to do the stuff that they're not very good at, like build teams, manage people, deal with the people problems. Maybe it's the get into the detail of the mechanics of how it's going to work and try and build it. Maybe it's speaking to customers, but they just burn out. Like, find what you're good at and then get people who love the jobs you hate. But I define it as there is 4 behaviors that make an intrapreneur, which is they're collaborative, they take ownership, they're resourceful, and they execute. And that would be different depending on the role. Like if you had an IC, those words would become like curiosity, resilience, adaptability, grit. But actually for a leader of people, your ability to collaborate, which really ties into this whole relationship, sort of go-to-network access type thing. People have to love working with you. You can't be the kind of person that rubs people out the wrong way or just like can't get a message through to people. You have to take total ownership. This is like the acting like a founder bit. You can't be someone who goes, well, that's not my responsibility. Or I need to be chased to go and get the work done. In startups, you have to be so resourceful because you don't have much resources. You're often taking on billion-dollar companies with your little, tiny budget and your LinkedIn account and sales now, maybe a phone, maybe some cool tech that you've got. And then you have to get stuff done because everyone talks a good game, but how many people actually go and do it? So collaborative ownership, resourcefulness, execution, they're the characteristics that make an entrepreneur who will multiply impact in your startup. And you're that, right? And I was wondering, for you, why do you prefer being an intrapreneur than an entrepreneur?
We had this conversation on our first meeting, and I spent a ton of time reflecting about it because it's always like, I've worked with tons of people who are like, screw this. Why am I going to lay my soul on the chopping block when I could just do this myself? I have the skill set to do it myself. Because the reality is the skill sets of an intrapreneur are frequently that of an entrepreneur because they're leading, right? They are leading. But I'm no fool to the sales game. When you look at the most common CEOs in startups, okay, I'm talking not later stage, because I think in later stage company, they are frequently CROs previous to CEOs. And we're starting to talk about that evolution. It used to be CFO to CEO. Now it's CRO to CEO. And I think soon it will be like RevOps to CEO. But I think in startups particularly, you really have to have all the skills that the CEO has. But sales leaders have an expiration date. All of us do. And we need to be very honest with ourselves about our experience, what we've done. Are you in the best position to lead the company? And not having experience doesn't mean you're not the best person, by the way. I don't equate those two things, as you said before. But being the right person for what the company needs at the time is different, right? And I just left a $10 to $50 million company. And for sure, I was the best person to lead it from 10 to 45. But I think those last 5 million might have been a stretch, not because of the revenue. It had nothing to do with the revenue. It had to do with where the company was and what was important to the company. This company had taken a huge shift towards efficiency and prepping for a sale and like really overhauling the leadership team, to be honest with you, which I think was needed in some ways. But I had a very easy time stepping away because I didn't think I was the best person to lead the team anymore. And I felt that so deeply in my body every day. Like you said, I was exhausted when I left that company every single day. And it was hard for me to walk away because it was mine. I had built it. There was ownership and ego there, but it was easy because I was exhausted. And I felt that melt off of me the minute I left. I only took a weekend off between last job and this job, and I felt it physically leave my body during that weekend. And I was like, okay, so we're getting back to what I'm good at, which is hyper growth, lots of testing, lots of failing, room for failure, but you better figure it out quick. Don't make the same mistake twice. So I think after a lot of introspection is that I have something that I'm good at. And CEO, I think I would also have an ego problem, not like being an entrepreneur is you have to be able to leave a company when it's your time to leave. And CEOs are programmed to never leave. It's theirs until that big payday or until that, but maybe they're not the right person for the company the whole time. And so I think I have an ego problem that I know exactly when to walk away from, and like it could be an issue, but I don't want to ride this until I'm just not the right person anymore. And I think sales is much more um it just has a natural life cycle more than something like product or operations, the most frequent leaders of a startup do, right? Tech is kind of, it doesn't have those high pressure changes from time to time. So I think just being a sales leader by career, it's and really evaluating what I enjoy, what I'm good at. I can't go down with the ship. And the founder better be ready to do that. Like they just have to. So I think that's why I prefer to build for other people is I know that my life cycle will have a natural end and I can't wait to shake the next person's hand. It means I did my job and I did it well and I got us to the place that, and that line might change, right? Like I said, it's not about 50 million, 100 million, 200 million. It's about what is the phase of the company? Are we still growing? Are we still building? Are we still iterating? Or are we scheduled for, up and to the right, slowly, little by little, focused on profitability and, looking good for a sale? That maybe that's just not my category. So this is the longest winded answer ever to a very simple
No,
question. But
it's you touched on so many. My brain's been firing like crazy, thinking about like so many things that we could talk about. I listened to a podcast the other day, Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn, and he talked about how people, when they sign up to work in a business, signing up for a tour of duty. It's not like I'm here for forever, but like I'm here for a tour of duty. And I think like defining what that looks like and what you're really good at, and like where the how to, you're hiring a who knows the how, but like how to where, like there's a point. And when you mentioned about, is it different for different stages? I was like, no, it's because in my mind, I just think about startups. So like my positioning is like 1 to 25 million ARR. And like we could probably go to 50, but like, yeah, you're exactly right. 30, something happens between 25 and 50, which is we're all about efficiency, profitability, average order value. And it's just about systemizing it. What I found is a different path for people. Obviously, a lot of people then go and try their own thing and do become an entrepreneur, or a lot of people become fractional, or sometimes businesses create roles for people to go and be entrepreneurial again. Like they're like, we want to open up in Europe, or we want to go after this new segment, or we're making this acquisition, or we're taking this new product to market. Would you like to own it? And I think a lot of these founders, if you really understand what makes people tick, is if you give them the opportunity to take that kind of challenge on, you could keep people a lot longer, because it's going to be super scrappy again. And I think that this whole like revenue stage thing, remember that there's this really important differentiation that no one really talks about in business, which is, I have a theory, there's no such thing as a big company. They're just little companies glued together.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be part of like, Salesforce selling the major part of their CRM solution, and that would feel like a massive business. But you could join the smaller part. So it's like almost like the P&L responsibility that you would have, because it is very different doing this sort of new product line 0 to 1 than it would be going from 25 to 50 million. And I personally would find that incredibly boring.
I think one word that you said is ownership. When I lost the ability to own outcomes,
Yeah.
because like you said, entrepreneurs have to take extreme ownership. Anytime we had to go through a layoff, it was because I made a bad decision and I hired a team that I shouldn't have hired, or I expanded a team that I shouldn't have expanded. And when that got beyond what I was comfortable owning, right? Like, okay, but I didn't actually make this decision. I actually fundamentally believe that this is still a good path for us and still a good way to invest in value money for the return. But yet I'm being handed an outcome now. This is where I think I lost. And when I get the chance to own something in an extreme way, whether it's success or failure, I don't care. I'm in for both. because you will fail. You won't meet goal all the time. You will come up short. It's the life we live, the life I chose. But I think that ownership part is the key to entrepreneurship, because you're comfortable taking on the ownership, but you're uncomfortable losing the outcome ownership. And that's, I don't know if I've worded that correctly. Maybe you have better words for that.
I think it's brilliantly said, and it's a very deliberate choice of word, the ownership piece, because there was the book Scaling Up, like the Rockefeller Habits book. They talk about for like a FACE, functional accountability chart, and it's like you have there's a difference between responsibility, accountability, and authority. And I think what a lot of people struggle with in leadership roles is I'm responsible for this, and I have to report back. I'm counting. That's what that means. But I don't have the authority to make decisions. And if you don't have the authority to make a decision, there's nothing more to kill the sort of like, the critical thinking and the execution and like they make it happen attitude than going, I can't even control what I go and do here. If you don't have, and I'd not thought about this before, the ability to actually even set the outcome, and then you don't have the authority, what are you? You're not a leader, right? You're a manager, and you're an operator inside of a business. And I think there's a big difference between those two people.
I certainly don't want it to be confused, because in revenue, we're often handed goals.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you get to be a part of making those goals of what's achievable. But once you take money, you're handed goals. Like it is what it is. What can you do about it? But I think the authority and the ownership to be able to own, I can achieve this outcome as long as I have these inputs. And if that outcome is what you said it is, that's great, right? That's the glory days, I think. But you nailed it. Like that's the definition of why, I think, because maybe I just have a control problem. A little too controlling to be. Yeah.
Maybe you need it. Maybe that's like, it should be part of the recruitment process for an entrepreneurial leader, which is, tell me about the control problem that you have.
For sure. I had a really interesting interview question when I was coming into this role.
Yeah.
He said, let's say you guys crush it and you hit 250 million in the next 2.5, 3 years. Are you going to be okay shaking the next person's hand and turning the keys over? And my answer to him was, if I'm no longer the best person for the role, then I am incentivized to do so because I have ownership in this company, equity ownership in this company. If I am the best person for the role, then I'm going to fight you for it because I think I can go to 500 or whatever the case is. And that's the thing is I want to own this as long as I feel like the next decision I make is good for the company, or I have some sort of gut feeling about what we could do. And it's in alignment. I don't want to do that alone. I don't want to be like cut off and said, good luck. I want to do it with the support of the organization and the investors and everybody to know that we can achieve those big things. But the minute that that's not in alignment, shaking hands, and it's in my best interest to do so. Right. So I think that that's a really interesting question to define. Like, do they understand what their bailiwick is? Does the sales leader understand what they're good at and how to be a part of that, and also how to lead gracefully in the wrong times? Because if you're a good sales leader, you don't want to fail forever. Like failing for like a year is a really long time. So understanding what it means to leave at the right time. And failing doesn't always mean, by the way, like on paper. It means that you're not objectively the best person to make the decisions, right? Like you could still be hitting revenue goals. It's even harder to understand where that line is then as well.
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting you remembered that question because it obviously made you think. I also wonder if there was like a definition that they were expecting would be good, and like what would be a fail. And it's like, well, what characteristic am I looking to expose through this question? Because I do like the question a lot. Did you ever have a conversation about why that question came up?
Well, now I can contact, but I will now.
Did you ever? It would be interesting to ask if when they ask that question, has anyone ever failed because they got that wrong?
Yeah. I'd be interested to ask because I think it came from like the Gongs of the world who really like like took off, and I know what their leadership functionality has looked like, and the person that starts the thing is often not there by the end of the thing, right? And whatever the end of the thing is, Tom's certainly not at the end. They're at a very, very, very high point. It's certainly not the end. So
Yeah.
I think that's what he was searching for, is, did I know, if I could speculate, and I'll ask, of course, but did I know the limitations of where my value was, and is my ego so big that I am the company and the company is me? And I think
Yeah.
that's what entrepreneurs have different than intrapreneurs, is the company is not me. Like, right, I didn't found it, I didn't create it. I was brought here to do a job, and my job is to grow this company. And of course there's a little bit of ego around it when you build something and you're proud of it and you
Yeah.
invest a lot into it. But
Yeah. I do like it. It's a good question because it makes us think and we talk about it, but it's like, you're obviously looking for self-awareness. You're looking for ego. You're looking for whether they put themselves ahead of the good of the company, and the ability to think critically. And you've talked about decision making. There's always like a part that I think that people don't connect in their minds when they're thinking about decision making, which is critical thinking. And we don't really get taught that. You know, we suddenly get responsibility to make decisions when we become leaders inside businesses. But how often do we like get taught skills around actually critically thinking about what would be the options here, and which of these is likely to cause the most amount of risk, which one has the biggest upside, which one makes the most sense for where we are in our context? That process is often something that's done after the effect, when we do a post-mortem and we think critically about the failures that we had. Was it something that you were taught? Were you ever taught how to think critically?
no, I don't think so. I think I failed my way to critical thinking. And now you like hesitate before you do something big. Like, I think with just naturally, the older you get, the more you think about things before you do it. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I was crazy. Like, I would try anything and I would do it, and I would just failed my way to the top in some
Yeah.
ways. And I've learned kind of what works and what doesn't in the shared experience of that. But for sure not. I had to learn it on my own, and also surround myself with people who think differently. Um, I hired for two different groupings. Number one, for the skills that I don't have. And number two, for people who can double me. Who's got the skills that's maybe 5 years younger than me, who doesn't have the experience, but they really can sit and drive and command and lead. Um, so hopefully, and I've had really amazing mentors in my career, and I think this is where mentorship and creating your own like personal board of advisors, having those minds around you, and it comes back to the relationship thing in the end, right? Like, having those brains around you to make you think differently. I've been challenged by some really brilliant people in my career. My last boss has he had never been a CRO before, but he was a CRO. He was a founder of the company. He had the best operational mind of anybody I've ever met in my life. So when I wanted to go try something because it was revenue related and I thought I could make a buck, he brought me back to orchestration. Well, how are we going to do it? How are we going to measure it? What's the like? And he never put the limit on me to not do it. He was like, yeah, do it. But while you're doing it, and execute fast, but think about these other things. And building with him was one of the most educating times of my life, because I had this this person who made me critically think about something that I wasn't technically that good at. And then I became an operative leader with people now surrounding me that hopefully I can give them something in the process. But I still surround myself with the things that I think I don't have, the people who have that experience. So, um, to answer your question, maybe yes. I said no at first, but I think maybe I have. I've been challenged by really, really smart people in my career. Um, and that's forced me to think like, okay, if they know this, how do I figure out these things? So,
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's like the wisdom piece, right? You know, we talk about technology and AI. AI has all the knowledge. So anyone now with an internet connection has unlimited knowledge. but they don't have wisdom and that ability to go, well, I know better than that. And like a lot of AI will just hallucinate and give you a load of nonsense, and it will always agree with you. It's like I type in something and it goes, "Great question, Richard." I'm like, how do I know? That's a good
Polite
question.
robots.
Yeah, exactly. And when I was having a conversation with someone the other day, they were saying the more you know about a subject, the more you can see how bad it is, like in terms of the way that it's programmed and the mistakes that it makes. And he goes, well, and then when you're asking questions about things you aren't so competent in, how much BS are you buying just because this thing's been programmed to agree with you? And it's interesting. And I think that what you've said is so interesting. Why a lot of people love to join startups and build their mentor network and surround themselves with interesting people is because we want to be challenged. We want to grow. Like, we don't see learning as weakness. We don't see being challenged as like a tap on our, or like a dent in our ego. It's a chance for us to get wiser and get better. And I think that wisdom part is fascinating. Like, what in your think about your career, it sounds like one of the things you've been doing successfully is building this challenge network and building this mentoring network. How important has that been to the success you've had in your career so far?
I can't say that I've done it well, so thanks for that trust of confidence there. I think I've learned a lot most recently in my career about building the team under me in a more special way. And that's really challenged me. But I think early on, my first job out of college goes by the name lovingly Uncle Rick. And I surrounded myself with old people. And he would love that I called him old. Like, he's this type of guy. And he guided through the first 5 jobs of my career. He helped me negotiate them. He helped me prepare for the interview. He flew to see me one time to help me prepare for a really big interview that I was about to take. He helps me evaluate almost every job offer. I always call him when I'm at these like pivot points in my career. I can name people like that in every phase of my career that I still talk to this day. And it comes back to the thing that I earned in every job, that the job gave me the baseline to do, but they didn't get to keep, was the network that I made. And I think that this is one of the things that I'm challenging young people in their careers now is your job will pay you to build relationships if you are in sales. They will. They will pay you to do it. They will pay to make those relationships better. They will pay for you to build your network. They will pay all of it. And it's the only thing that they don't get to keep. Your relationships are your IP when you leave there. Your customers that you get to build your relationships with are your IP, your coworkers, the investors and advisors, if you get the opportunity to be in front of them, are mentors. And it's one of the things that I think everybody needs to build for themselves. So I've been very lucky to have them backing me. And now I think it's finally my turn. And I know enough now to maybe pay that forward and to be a mentor for some of the people that have been raised up behind me. And I think you have to be deliberate. It takes time. It takes effort. But young people absolutely must do it. You will land some goose eggs if you don't. So bring somebody wiser that's been there, done that, that's been through the challenges and the PTSD, as we spoke about, a startup world, and figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah, I love it. It's wonderful advice. And I think most people listening to this would be able to think about who those people are in their life. And like you say, it's not a person who cares about who you are because of your title, or because of the company you're in. It's like they care about you, and that will transcend whichever company you're in. I think a lot of people really struggle with that. A lot of they've been quite transactional in the way that they've managed relationships. And so for when they move onto a company and they talk about, I've got this Rolodex, we say Blackbird, but we've got this Rolodex, suddenly it doesn't work. And all these people that companies hire because of their Rolodex aren't successful, because when they try and access these relationships that they think they had just because they closed some business off them, they're like, no, you're not valuable to me. This is what you do, right? And we're talking about this topic of like relationships. Like, what's your approach to building genuine relationships with people that are beyond just the transactional relationship that might have caused you to actually interact with them in the first place?
You said one word, and that's all that matters, and it's genuine. And I think like it comes at a cost, by the way. Like you don't get to just sell and move on. Um, I in my last role, we were a transactional sale. We were very, very small ACV. We didn't really know our customers, which is something that needed to change as we decided to move up market. Um, and I was the lady behind the wall building the machine, and I was really comfortable in that role, like just moving the chess pieces around, trying to make this revenue machine work and build money. Then I transitioned to Orbb because I saw the gap. What we did 5 years ago was not working anymore. So I actually went out, and that's how I found Orbb, by the way, is I actually went out to the market and said, who can help me harness my relationships? Who can give me the data? We had hundreds of thousands of customers, hundreds of thousands. Who can help me get to that data? And that's why I picked Orbb. I didn't actually sell it to the last company because a little bit of a conflict of interest at that point. But in the end, I chose it because of like surfacing the data of how you think about relationships, how we think about relationships at Orbb. But when it comes to building them, your relationships naturally exist in some places, right? Think about it. The people you've worked with in your career. You have relationships with them. You do. You lived in the trenches with them. You were in the same role, in the same space, in the same time. So you have a relationship with those people. Your customers, many, many, many times, you do have relationships with your customers. You were memorable. You had something like you had a connective tissue with them at that time if you were solving one of their pain points that you could walk them through. And then it comes to natural curiosity. Why are we sitting here talking today? Like, it's not really a describable thing. I don't think either one of us are going to make tons of money from one sitting down together with one person for an hour, but now we're invested in each other. When I have my next talent issue, who am I going to call? Right? Like, I've got this connective tissue because we've sat and we brainstormed together. We've given each other maybe a little something that we'll never forget. And it came from the access that I had to you and you had to me and the way that we were connected together. So I think you have to be intentional, but you can't try too hard because you need to be able to provide people value. You need to be able to meet them where they are. And it needs to be genuine and natural, right? It can't be like just snake oil salespeople or whatever. Like it has to be part of what's natural in life. So I gave you zero benefit in that answer because it's also esoteric in some ways, right? Like it's natural and the natural cycles of relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's why it's quite hard to teach this stuff, right? Is, if someone doesn't think that way and they are just so pragmatic that people are just, a thing to them rather than like something to invest in. It's like the whole, like, do people see you as a cost or investment? Or do they see you as like dollar signs or like stuff that you could learn from? Is there value in how they see you? And we can tell that in a business if someone sees us as a cost, but we can also tell it in terms of outreach. When someone's trying to access it, it's like, are they seeing me as like, I can bring value to this person and I'd like to learn from this person? Or is it, you're someone I can get something from? And it stinks, right? Like
It
that
does.
commission breath, but it's like that getting mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so many people struggle with them.
And it's definitely the reason why relationships up to date have been hard to plug into the go-to-market strategy using our own colloquialisms here. Like to plug your customers, your relationships into your revenue cycle is difficult because you can't do what you have always done, which is put them into a cadence and press the buttons to move them along. It has to be natural. It has to be from where the relationship exists. And that's how you get access. And that's why I consider what we're doing in white space is because relationships are not new, but the way to scale access is. And it's because we've been unleashed by AI in a way, because now we can use AI to evaluate this data set that is completely unstructured and completely wild. And We have social sentiment analysis, and you should read some of these things. I was looking at how they train the model, like all the comments that the model is reading, and it's some of the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's like what people comment is so strange and weird, and you're trying to teach a computer how to read this, and it's exceptionally done. And when you can now use technology to filter through relationships and relationship strength, which CRMs have never been a relationship manager. I will say it again, CRMs have a broken R. There is no such thing as relationships in a CRM, but now we have the technology to do it. And now we have the technology to really be able to understand and have the data around relationships. So now putting that into your revenue system is much more reasonable. Still requires an education, opportunity, but definitely much more reasonable to crunch this now than it's ever been.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get tactical for a minute then. I think that it would be really fascinating to hear your view. Someone who's worked in lots of startups, you're in a place that's like, like you say, trying to be 18 months ahead of the curve. You're helping businesses solve the challenges that you've faced, and you're seeing how hard it's getting. You actually mentioned something that we'll touch on to tee this up, which I think will be interesting. You said, hot take, it's going to get way harder second half of this year. Tell me more about what prompted that.
Yeah, I mean, you see these email clients are getting really, really good. They were 18 months ahead of like the Gmail home screen. So if you take Fixer or Superhuman, this is why emails are broken, because I counted this morning specifically because I anticipated this question. I had 24 pitch emails when I woke up. I woke up at 4:30 this morning. Where the hell are these people sitting? Where are they? They are not in my time zone because I was up before they were, for sure. So when I can segment these out of my inbox, Gmail is coming, I think it's being released in Gmail right now. If it's not already, Outlook will be another 6 months behind or something. But this type of email becomes completely finished. It is done because I'm not even going there to look to see if anybody has a good idea. I auto delete them every day. So I'm not even looking at them. They're basically undelivered. So now you have a deliverability problem because they look like they're delivered. They went to a real email address, an active email address, but I'm not seeing them. So email's finished. Cold calling. I forget the stat, and somebody here can correct me maybe, but it's like the majority of people answering the phone today are Apple users, because Samsung came out with like a year ago this pre-screen of unknown numbers. Apple's coming out in 2-3 months with this pre-screen of unknown numbers in the iOS. So now your cold call is becoming a subject line of an email. The listener, the receiver of the cold call, is going to have the opportunity to understand why you're calling before they ever pick up the phone, because you get to leave a message before it happens, right? I think it's going to dramatically change. I don't think cold calling it'll completely die eventually, but I don't think it'll be completely dead in the first blow, because people get really crafty about how they deliver that, that subject line on the phone. But then it's going to make the problem that you're solving have to be so much more relevant. So I think in later 2025, we will completely see the deadening of the water in these cadence sequence style approaches. You'll have to shove more volume in than ever, cross your fingers and hope for some luck, but it definitely won't be efficient anymore. Same thing with Google. Like, most people are using ChatGPT as a Google now. So now the game isn't PPC, it's SEO and content and really large scale investments on the front end to make sure you show in GPT when somebody's asking a question. The way we're operating as humans is changing. It's rapidly. 6 months ago, people were just getting into using GPT as a search engine. Now, even the elders like me are getting into using GPT as an operating system, not as just a search engine. I don't Google things anymore. I ask the chatty, right? Like, I'm constantly just in long running conversation with the chatty. So I think this year, back half of this year, early next year, we're going to see some things shake up. And it'll be, I was talking with a revenue leader the other day and he said he's already feeling it. They pumped 1.3 times the volume into their top of funnel and actually got less results. And they're a very successful company, great product, that you just get less. So the efficiencies are dropping off a cliff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see it all the time and you see it in the data. So what will be the phoenix that rises out of these ashes? What will make the best sales teams win in 2026?
Relationships. Like I'm paid to say it, so believe me if you want, but we're going back. I'm seeing a lot of 15 years ago coming back. And I came up the traditional way. So I was an SDR 15 years ago. I think you're going to see a lot more in-person events and meetings. People are craving for this. They don't want to be emailed anymore. Socials are still hanging on. LinkedIn is still a very, very, very good spot if your ICP is there and active, which I'm lucky that mine is. I see trade shows coming back quite a bit post-COVID. But relationships will be the thing that you can scale in an efficient way. Like all of those things I just mentioned cost tons of money. The CAC on those types of leads are very high. So when you're looking at how do we take semi-successful companies and make them mega successful, it will be involving their customers' pathways, not pipeline. It'll be how do we get the pathway into our account and how do we influence those deals in the right way.
So let's meet people where they're at. So let's say that they're in that place now going, we're trying to increase volume. We're trying to do more to get the result. What are some of the very practical ways that they can think about this whole pathways and access topic that you've mentioned that they might not be considering today?
Referrals and not making them passive. It's probably the easiest one. You have to come with really good data. You can't bring the ask, but referrals are one of the easiest go-to-market systems to run if you have a good product and good customers already. And they're pretty efficient as well because normally people they don't reinvent themselves, right? So if you're selling to CFOs, that CFO has worked with tons of accountants or, FP&A people in the past that are now CFOs other places. So they leave in their pathways, lots of people just like them. Just like me, I've been a sales leader for 15 years. A lot of the people I've worked with in my career are now sales leaders in their own respective jobs. So I carry the ability to introduce you to a lot of people like me because that's who I've worked with in the past. So this is one very, very, very tactical way to get referrals. And I think the other one is like a little bit lighter, but in the same vein, which is warm intros, making sure like not a true, like I use your product. I can sell it to this other person, not as deep as that, but like, hey, I can get you in front of that person, right? Like I can get you time, I can get you space. Just like when Steven told us, hey, schedule time, that was mutually beneficial for us, right? Like we found, and he didn't need to be a part of it at all. He just had to make the link. So I think those are super practical ways that you can do without technology. Will only be scaled with technology, though.
Do you think it's that people don't ask or that they do it wrong?
They do it wrong. How many LinkedIn first degree connections do you have? I know, by the way, if you don't. So
I guess around 10,000.
You have 11. How many of them do you know?
Yeah, what is it? Like, there's Dunbar's number, right? That 150 people. So like in terms of like people that I might be able to actually like recall about their life, I guess I've probably met or even spoken to maybe 500.
We say that in a bad, like for the people who build LinkedIn followings, their numbers typically around 2%. For the people who nurture their networks, 4 to 6% is like, this is somebody who networks for a living, somebody like you. So these two numbers signify what's wrong. This is how people are establishing who knows who. is their LinkedIn connections. My SDRs every single day ask me, I see you're connected to this person I'm reaching out to. Do you know them? The answer is always no. Always. Because why? I'm using my LinkedIn to sell to people. And this is what LinkedIn has always been used for. So there's also like, we need to talk about how you ask for that introduction, and like there's best practices and things. But I think making the ask is very simple, but doing so with the right information is very difficult. And that's where we've seen the big hole in the market is not in, of course, there's an orchestration problem with everything, right? You have to be able to orchestrate it, but the data, the fundamental data layer must be good in order to even think about orchestrating anything. So this is where like we're kind of redefining the market as to what's a good relationship. How do you identify a good relationship? So I think it's, to very simply answer your question, it's the wrong avenues, not the wrong practice.
Yeah, interesting. I think we're almost out of time, but it would be wrong of me not to ask this question, which is, let's say someone's going, what is this Orbb? You keep mentioning, and we'll maybe put a link below so people could have a conversation with you if they wanted to. But like, what's the business problem that you're helping people to solve?
We are orchestrating relationships into your revenue structure. In one sentence, we are helping you identify the right relationships that are meaningful to your most ideal ICP accounts and personas, and giving you the ability to orchestrate them in your team at scale. We are triggering your AEs to now operate this as a real function within your revenue system.
Amazing. And what sort of results could people typically experience?
They are all over the place, but you are 5 times more likely to receive access to somebody via a warm intro or referral than you are cold. And I think that number is very conservative, conservative. When you think about, on average, people have like a 4% connect rate on the phone, and even less than that success rate once they connect. You can reduce sales cycles because you're over the trust hump, right? So if I have access to somebody and they know somebody that's already bought my product, they can trust me. You have social proof. You're going in with social proof, so that reduces the cycle. You can also sell bigger deals because of that. They already know what they're getting in some ways. They've talked to their friend. You don't have to go through the whole upsell thing later, start small, land big. You can really just get there. So I think it comes back to the things that we started this fall with. All 3 phases of the revenue cycle can be influenced and affected by relationships that you already have. It is your company's IP. It is not something your competitors have access to. It is exclusively your company's.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. I think that's a perfect point to end. And we have to get you back on the pod because there's so much more we could talk about, Jessica.
Yeah, we could go for hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so for everyone who's listened, thank you so much for your time. We'll see you on the next episode. And Jessica, thank you so much. It's been
Thank you so much. It's been amazing. Thank you for having me.
See you all soon. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this conversation, we've got a newsletter called Growth Magnet on LinkedIn, where we take the best insights from all of these episodes and turn them into bite-sized format for you to enjoy.